And right now, we want to get back to that news conference. The Maclin family and their attorneys are holding a news conference to discuss the charges. Let's go ahead and listen to this.
Today is police accountability. We all support the police. We know they have a tough job. But what happens when they do what they're not supposed to do? What happens when they step outside of legal conduct and engage in criminal conduct and violate individuals' rights? How do we hold them accountable? How do we send the right message so that it doesn't happen again? And there are three ways to do that. The first is the criminal justice system. And traditionally, this has been very ineffective at getting police to change their conduct. Why? Well, in Indianapolis, IMPD polices itself. They do not call in any outside agency to investigate. Their own detectives investigate every police shooting. And so what happens? You get a police investigation that results in a probable cause affidavit that is extremely favorable to the police. You have police officers who are represented from moment one by union attorneys who carefully help them craft their statement that goes into this probable cause affidavit that then goes to the prosecutor's office. And what happens? Well, traditionally, the prosecutor will take that probable cause affidavit into court, show it to a judge, and the judge will say no criminal charges. That's what usually happens. Very rarely have we seen IMPD officers prosecuted for illegal conduct. Now, there's been a change in that development. We have a prosecutor now, Ryan Mears, who is willing, in cases like Anthony's, to let a grand jury of Marion County citizens decide whether or not there's evidence and whether those officers should face criminal charges in court. And that's what happened on Friday. A Marion County grand jury handed down 7 felony accounts against 2 of the officers who fired 30 shots into a car where Anthony was sleeping, not committing any crime, not threatening anybody, not doing anything that deserved a barrage of bullets that day. So we applaud the prosecutor for doing his job, doing an end around IMPD's attempt to brush these cases under the rug when it comes to criminal accountability. And we look forward to the criminal process playing itself out. And interestingly, we saw today a little bit of the circle the wagons mentality in IMPD. Who was it that marched in and paid the bond for the bail for those officers today? Who was it? It was the supervisor, Officer Riley, who was on the scene with them when they fired 30 bullets into the car. So what sends a better message that we got your back, what you did is not wrong, then the supervisor who should have prevented that is the one that's paying their bond. The second way that we hold police accountable when they step outside the law is through civil lawsuits, the civil justice system. And in that regard, today we filed a complaint against all 3 officers, including the supervisor who fired 1 shot, but then sat by while the other 2 officers fired 30 more over 7 seconds. Have you ever counted how long 7 seconds is? No return fire. 7 seconds that supervisor sat there and watched the other 2 officers fire, and he had a duty to stop it. So we filed this complaint. And not only is this complaint against the officers who fired on Anthony that day, but it is also against the chief, Chief Taylor, and the city for their custom and practice of not disciplining the officers. Because until an officer loses their job and a paycheck, they are not going to change their ways.
That's right.
And that brings us to the third and final way to hold officers accountable, and that is through discipline. Now, this can be done. You know, in the age of body cams, we all can see what happened right away. We all can look at what happened and see, did the officer violate policy? After the Aaron Bailey police shooting years ago, which was a lot similar to Anthony's, because you had an individual in a car that they said had a gun, said pointed a gun, but didn't, and they fired on him. After the Bailey case, they changed their training, announced in 2020, we are going to change our training. We are going to teach our officers to maintain distance, maintain a barrier, de-escalate the situation. This is the training we're going to give every officer every year so we don't unnecessarily shoot, and it's usually a white officer on a black victim. We are going to change our policies so this doesn't happen. We are going to change our training. Well, they changed the training But guess what? The officers still aren't following it. How do you ensure an officer follows their training? You hold them accountable when they violate that training. And here's what we're going to say. We brought this up. Groups have called for firing of officers, and they always fall back on the merit board. The law in Indianapolis says that it's not just the chief who can fire an officer, it has to be the civilian merit board. That is true. However, the chief has the authority. He has the authority to suspend an officer without pay and recommend termination, and he can do that right away. He could do that today. And he should do that today. He should do it in the Herman Whitfield case, where the officers were charged with crimes. He should do it in Anthony Maclin's case. He should do it in the Gary Harrell case, where officers shot Mr. Harrell in the back. And there's video evidence in all of these. They don't have to wait for the criminal process to play out. Those officers deserve their day in court, to whether they go to jail or not, whether they go to prison or not. The question for the chief is not, did they commit a crime? The question for the chief is, did they violate policy? Did they violate training? And he can make that determination now. He can say that they should not have a job, but what does he do? He puts them off on administrative leave for a few days, paid. Then he slides them back into a desk job, paid. And then when the media furor dies down, they go right back into their regular job, paid. In our complaint, we set out the statistics. It is unconscionable. From 2020 to 2021, there were 23 police shootings by IMPD officers. This is three.
All right, and you just heard from the attorney of Anthony Maclin and his family responding to those charges against the two IMPD officers involved in that incident. Our Karen Campbell is at that news conference. We'll hear more from her ahead at 12:30. And as always, you can get the latest on this case right now at WTHR.com.